Okay, I'm here to introduce the next segment, and what you just saw on screen was a podcast hosted by our CTO, Asanka and Sanjiva. So what we're going to do in the next session, which is the Fireside chat, is kind of a live version of what you saw there, deep diving into the complexities of modernization. So can I invite back on stage Asanka and Sanjiva? So as Sanjiva mentioned earlier today, we had another panelist who was due to join us, chairman of WSO2 and former CEO of Microsoft Sweden, Jonas Persson, but he couldn't be here today. But we'd also like to call Jeremy back on stage to join this discussion as a guest. Okay, with that, I'll hand it over to you, gentlemen.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. So we are doing this podcast for a while now. So Sanjiva and I usually discuss many topics, and then we decided we should share our discussions publicly. So we started the podcast, and we recorded 15 episodes now. And this is the first time we are live on stage. So usually what we do, we pick a topic, and then we just go free format, and then we don't have a script. So he got 6 dogs, and I got 2 dogs. Sometimes they come and feature on the podcast, so we have to edit a little bit, and then we publish it. That's the usual format we do, and sometimes we invite a guest. So Frank came and featured once, and then we had a couple of other guests as well, like Gregor Hobbs. So that's what we usually do. And this time we thought of invite Jeremy, and then unfortunately Jonas couldn't make it. So today what we thought, getting a little deep into the sessions that they did, and then discuss about platformless modernization as well as the points that Jeremy brought in. So usually, like, there's no moderator, we take a free form, as I said. But today I'll take the point guard's position a little bit, and then do some assist, let them to score, because they are really good shooting guards. So that's the format we are planning to take. So Jeremy, I think it was an interesting conversation and an interesting keynote that you did. And you had 6 points in your, one of your slides. So shall we start with that, and then getting into a little bit more detail? Like, from your 6 points, where's the most focus? I think let's start with the success stories and then get into the roadblocks. Where's the most focus in some of these organizations that you are dealing with? And then where they are struggling as well, so we can get in to that after that.
Sure. I have no dogs, so hopefully I can still qualify to participate in the conversation. And my basketball skills also are not that great, but I'll try. But yes, thank you for having me. I would say fundamentally, the place where if you really get to root cause challenges, and I think I alluded to it in the talk, I think the thing that makes this hard is actually the cultural transformation elements of it. The fact that this is, ultimately becoming a software-driven organization or a software-driven business is a cultural shift. And you look at companies that have really done this well, actually the CEOs have usually gone on like a learning journey if they're not already technologists. I talked to one who spent a year, where he got on the board of some software companies and spent time with them and absorbed, like, what does this really mean, right? Because I think it is, if the senior leadership team doesn't understand like the cultural implications of that quite deeply, how to operate differently, and that this is not just a question of, hiring some product development teams or engineers, but actually requires change, usually from the top, you're not likely to be successful in my experience. I think the other part of your question was sort of where are we seeing the most focus? In terms of our work, the place where we see the most interest and excitement right now is, I mean, it sparks off of the impact of AI on this process. And we see a ton of companies saying, how do we, rethink how we're building software leveraging AI? But, usually, as I had mentioned, starting with probably too narrow a frame of that question to really be successful, often starting with just thinking about AI-assisted coding rather than the much broader lens that I think it really takes to get value.
Great. With that, I'll pass the ball to you, Sanjiva. So
let me quickly comment on one of his, I think the leadership comment. I just want to, software companies also used to be led by business people.
Yeah.
And we see that transition as well, right? Now, if you look at all the major software companies, they're led by technical people. They're basically engineers who are leading the company. And that wasn't common. When we started WSO2, I remember the first board meeting, one question was, when are we getting a real CEO? Right? Because, this is a business problem. Running a company was a business problem, not a technical problem. And that was a legitimate question. And in fact, the VC funding model at the time was, you have the founding CEO through the first round of funding, then you get rid of that person, you bring on a business person to run the company.
Yeah.
Right? So I think and we've learned over the time that technology companies perform best with technically savvy leadership.
Yeah.
And what you're pointing out is that a company, which is not even a technology company, that wants to go down a technology-led journey needs leadership that understands the technology. You can't be completely oblivious to what is possible and what is not possible and be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so we authored this paper, a Platformless Manifesto. I think it's almost a year now. So one question, even today, a few people asked from me about this build versus buy. Since we have Choreo, sometimes leaders, they think you have to always buy. So I think it's a little bit important to clarify that about the platformless concept, as well as it's not always that you have to buy something, you can build that as well. So shall we capitalize on that and share?
Absolutely. So one of our largest customers in Europe, I can't name them, unfortunately, but they have, I think, about 10,000 different APIs running. And they are a very large corporation with lots of different things running, a global business. And they run a fantastic platformless architecture. The developers, when they want to write some new capability, they write it, they have a declarative statement about these are the dependencies, this is what I'm going to offer, this is what I'm going to consume, and a pipeline comes in and everything is done for you. That's absolutely platformless. That developer doesn't have to spend their time thinking about how do I get this thing or going and asking for permission. And if you can't get access to that, your build will fail and you'll get notifications saying you can't use that. So it is absolutely possible to create that experience without buying a product. And it's a question of what is the capability set that you have in the organization. I think in Jeremy's talk also he referred to some of these, that in order to build the foundational infrastructure, you need a certain kind of skill set. But as time goes along, I keep coming back to this collaboration analogy. We today don't think about collaboration. We just use Google Office, Google or Microsoft, and that's it for the most part. And so that has become a bar that you just don't go below. There's all kinds of stuff under this platform. We don't go below that. We just sit on top of it. Don't think about it. And it holds up, right? Same thing applies. So for a company, if you have the capacity and you have the reason, and certainly national governments, very good reason why you want to be in control of everything. Security-related functions, defense, and so forth, want to be in control of everything. There's all kinds of environments where you do have full control of every single thing and want to make those choices. But over time, there is a point at which you start saying, okay, it's not worth my figuring this out. So maybe I put the pieces together, I do best of breed, put the pieces together, but these architectures are becoming well understood. The SDLC process is understood. The tool chain is understood. There are 10 choices for each box. And you can go to AWS and you get 10 choices for each box on AWS. But is that the right thing for everybody? That's a choice. Depends on the organization's culture, which again, Jeremy referred to as one of the most important things, creating that software culture. And that culture, if they have that culture and they want to take that level of control and they believe in that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
By the way,
sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think, that absolutely resonates. It also, that's one thing I liked about that quote at the end, which was from the guy who leads Aladdin, which is BlackRock's software platform. And it speaks to exactly this idea of, over time, actually this is about empowering a huge portion of the organization to build, right? Easier tools that enable, this is not an IT function. This is actually about enabling bottom-up innovation across the organization. And that's when this gets really powerful.
I think we had like two key objectives there as well from the consumer and the producer side. When it comes to the platform, producer is the platform engineer, and then the consumer is the people who's building stuff on top of the platform. Yeah. So the main idea we had from the producer point of view, how you build the correct platform. And then from the consumer point of view, what's the platform you required to build stuff on top of that. So that's where like the build versus buy also coming. If you are building, build the correct platform, and if you are buying, then pick the correct platform. And this is not the first time we build a platform like this. I think 2011, 2012 timeframe, we built one. Yeah, that was like a pre-Kubernetes era. Like we dealt with the LXCs and those kind of technologies and try to build it. And this is the second time. So the idea with Choreo, basically, now we wrote the concept, we need to prove it. So we are delivering it through the platform itself. So Sanjiva, one thing now, we spoke about modernization. And I've been with WSO2 now almost 18 years. So we modernize, like from the product point of view, from the way that we work. So I think it's good to share our experience as well, because how you can run a modern organization and what are the foundational things that you should do, since you are sitting on the driving seat. So I think it's coming from you is better. So shall we touch base on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a couple of things that I believe in my heart and soul, and I forced on everybody else's heart and soul, whether they like it or not. Which is, one is you need to learn to be dispassionately passionate. So that is, you should be passionate about whatever you are working on, whatever you believe in today, but you should always be open to the possibility that it may not be the one truth that holds for all time. Because almost nothing holds for all time. This is what we see in the world, the way the world works, the way the physics works. There is no such thing called a constant that is always true. So you should, but at the same time, you can't be half-hearted about what you're doing. If you're doing something, you got to go all in. But you go all in while you're doing that, then you leave room for the possibility that maybe the rug might get pulled underneath and you need to be ready to jump over as things move along. Right? Or another way of putting it is strong ideas, weakly held. Strong opinions, weakly held. It's good to have an opinion. Somebody who doesn't have an opinion is boring. You talk to somebody, they're like, wow, this is good, everything's good. This is kind of boring. You want to have a debate. But then it should be a debate where it's a constructive conversation, not like debates on Twitter, which is, it's kind of not a constructive conversation. We're shouting at each other, but nothing ever happens, right? But so that approach has to become part of the culture in the organization, to say that, look, yes, we worked on this, we worked on that, we did this, but time comes along, things move along. And one of the biggest decisions that we have a BOF on it, I think tomorrow, is about we are moving on from Java, right? Java has been our anchor for a long time. I got involved with Java in 1993. And I was teaching Java classes in 1994, 95. I did a whole bunch of stuff. But it's fantastic. It's awesome. But it is not the right language for building system infrastructure anymore. So this is religious. You can imagine, this is my language. What do you mean you're changing my language, right? But this is a collective conversation we've had inside the company, and we choose to move on at some point. Now, that doesn't mean somebody who's using our products in Java is going to be in trouble or anything like that. Of course, it doesn't mean that. It means that when we build the next iteration of our technology stack, for example, the open source Choreo that you heard about, that's written completely in Go. Right? There is no Java in it at all. So this kind of approach where you have to be able to question yourself. You have to believe in what you're doing. You have to be committed to it, but you have to be able to question yourself. And the signal to question often comes from outside. So that means you must be, while you're focused and you have your blinders on and you're barreling down the road, you must be aware that there's stuff happening Because for every smart person we have in WSO2, there are 10,000 smart people outside. And so they come up with ideas that we didn't think about. And you shouldn't be saying, well, NIH can't touch it, right? You have to be open to other people's ideas. Not invented here is a formula for irrelevancy.
Yeah. And I think one thing you touch on your slides as well about the first principle thinking, because there are two ways of doing stuff, reasoning by analogy, reasoning by first principles. So one thing I realize that's one of the key elements that we have, why we can modernize as well as keep on evolving with that as well. And then some of the fundamental stuff like autonomy, I think a lot of people, they say like, okay, you have freedom, but then again, whether you are practicing it. So I'll share one story actually. So once, a long time back, you sent me to Boston to do some consulting work, and I came back, my seat was changed, and I had a question, so why my seat was changed. Then I walked you. So probably you knew why I'm coming, then you just close the door and then ask about the trip. And then I asked why my seat has changed. Then you said, okay, there was a product lead who's going to grad school. And then we thought you will take that product management lead of that particular product area. Then I said, no, I don't want to do that. Then you asked, what do you want to do? Then I said, okay, I would like to work on across the products and then make a better impact. Then in a usual case, I think either the leader will push to take that, or either I will get a letter from HR. But you did a different thing. You threw a service-oriented architecture book to me and then said, read and then figure out and come back what you want to do. That's how we started solutions architecture as a function at WSO2. So I think sometimes it's easy to say stuff, but not practicing. So that's one of my personal experience about how autonomy and then decision-making happening at WSO2. Jeremy, I think you might see this stuff inside the organizations as well, and you had a slide about the culture. And one aspect is about this project and product mindset, right? Because sometimes people think modernization is a fixed budgeted, fixed time project. Yeah. So I think that's a mistake, and that's why a lot of modernization efforts are starting, but then again, it doesn't end. Share about how you see this as well as the importance of the product mindset, basically.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I love the story. This is a good, I think I'm taking notes in some of my, for some of the internal tools that we're building, I was having a similar discussion this morning. So good management principles here. But I think, look, usually one of the first things that we do for companies that want to embark on this is look at their operating model, right? And how are they actually organized? How do they actually, set up their teams? How do they interact? How do they make priority choices, et cetera? And setting up, something that is much closer to a product and platform operating model is incredibly important to enable more dynamic teams with more autonomy that can make choices and really drive productively. It drives a much greater sense of ownership, much better productivity. I think one part of that also is establishing some platform elements that they can build on, which itself is often also a bit of a cultural transformation. If you talk to, having established those teams multiple places, I would say there is often there's a shift, right, to get to that model where, engineers like to control all their own choices, make every, decision, want to be able to say, okay, I'll just, take whatever I want. If I don't like what's inside the company, I'll go outside and buy something different and, have a huge amount of flexibility. And I think enabling that is great, but, you have to kind of shift the mindset to embrace some platform components to be able to get efficiency and be able to build, more productively over time. And it speaks a little bit to your, religious beliefs comment from before, shifting that religion so that people start to see the benefits of it and don't view it as a constraint, but view it as a way to go faster, is usually one of the trickiest parts, I would say, of that transition. There's also obviously, there's pieces as well of just reorganizing how these teams are set up as well. That is often quite important, and how the budgeting process works, so that you can have more, as I talked about, right, more persistent teams that are focused on individual product areas rather than sort of a project mentality, essentially.
Yeah, I think even in a software company, there's there is when you talk to the board, they might think that, well, we shipped the product, so why do you still need another 70 people working on this product? You shipped it.
Yeah.
Now you're done. Now you can go and do something else. Well, it doesn't work like that, because ship the product is just a snapshot of where you are.
Right.
And you have this whole long journey in front of you that you're still going on.
That's the beginning.
That's just the starting point, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a mindset that has to be understood, that when you get into software, in Sinhalese, there is Sinhalese in my language, there's a word called "badagattalang gahapang bere," which means if you get married, keep drumming, right? So you start a software product, you're not giving it up.
Yeah.
You keep on going with it. You have to keep on going with it. It doesn't end. And for a company like WSO2, because we are underneath, we are under many things that you used to come here and so forth. Most of you don't know about it. We can't walk away, because there's a responsibility, right? So there's a long-term commitment so that mindset of saying this is a ongoing journey, and you can't make random turns. You got to navigate it very smoothly is really, really important. And the developer, and coming back to the developer side, again, I've given this talk to this sort of 19 to 20-year-old, 22-year-old kind of age group, where I talked about the relationship between freedom and responsibility. Mm. And I kind of mapped out your life and showed that, look, the best time in your life is actually that era where you're in university, because you have the maximum freedom, the least responsibility. When you're a child, you have no freedom. Everything's parental approval, right? When you start real life, no freedom, because you don't need anybody else's approval, but you got family, you got kids, you got this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And then you get another shot maybe at the end of the life, but then your body doesn't work as well anymore. So that's your best shot, right? But their freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. Yeah. And same thing is true for engineers or developers or anything. You can take responsibility. If you can have all the freedom you want, you can say, well, it's Docker, right? I don't care about library use. I don't care about software library you pull in from NPM. You can wipe code away, and you can say, just pull in whatever things you want. But hey, there's serious responsibility, because you can have a supply chain attack. You can have all kinds of problems that come up from that randomness and freedom that you have. So it's always a delicate balance that you need to maintain. And so for me, the guardrails, you could look at that as, oh, this is a constraint. I can't do whatever I want. It's also not my problem anymore. Somebody else has solved this problem for me. I sit on top of that. So my innovation foundation keeps rising as this kind of things get built.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the BlackRock person's comment is exactly that.
Exactly.
Just bring it all the way to everybody, because then they can all feel like, why can't I do it?
Yeah. And even this product thing applies for platforms as well, that we have seen some platform teams, again, treating it as a project and then try to deliver it. The end result is not that great. Either people are not happy and they are not using the platform. I think that's another problem with that, because if you can remember this shadow IT concept we had some time back, it's happening again. You have a platform, you have invested a lot, but nobody's using it. They are building stuff outside the platform.
Right. Shadow platforms.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's common, yeah.
Exactly. I think there are like a bunch of things. One is the self-service nature, as well as whether the platform providing enough capabilities. All these things are there. And then, yes, from the enterprise architecture point of view, you need governance. But then again, how you can have a more federated governance that you control certain stuff. Yes, we need to have set of control, but how you can offload it to the teams. You mentioned about the teams. It's about this two pizza teams concept. So how you can offload those things to those teams with some guardrails is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think the governance is an important, interesting point, because everybody on the sort of the responsibility sides wants governance. Everybody on the doing sides wants freedom. And so nobody likes to be governed. But we have to be governed. There are rules that we operate within, right? I don't know if you remember, Asanka, a long time ago, we went to a conference and we had the T-shirt, back of the T-shirt said, be your own NSA. Yeah. Don't govern, surveil. We were working on this sort of data observability business analytics platform, right? So governance can be done through rules that you are told you must follow, or you can also do governance through observing what's going on and then looking at the stuff. That's why, I'm not trying to push a product, but the idea of governing with documents, which LLMs now enable, is massive in my mind, because it allows you to say, just do whatever you want, no problem. But we will check it, automated, no emotion involved. It's not that I don't like your stuff, but this document that we've all agreed is the way we should do stuff is telling you're not playing by the rules.
Yeah.
Right? So it gives away a kind of surveillance approach for governance as well. So there are. I think again the advent of AI opens up this creativity, gives ways to empower people to be creative, and yet maintain the desired level of control and governance that you must have in an enterprise. You can't have Wild West.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point about AI, and I think we can get into technology a little bit, because there's this cloud native, AI native, those are playing a bigger role in modernization as well, how you can use it. And now there's a reason for modernize as well. If you are not modernized, you can't leverage some of these capabilities. So we can probably touch based on the technology side a little bit.
Yeah.
Jeremy, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as I said, we see a huge interest in leveraging AI right now, obviously, and it is driving a interest in cleaning up modernizing some of the architecture, also the data foundations in many cases, because, I mean, usually, as we go into organizations and look at how they want to use AI, oftentimes the data is not yet really set up in a way. I mean, even though, sure, you can take in unstructured data and all this, but you need to have data set up in a way that the AI can learn from it. And oftentimes there's a process of, setting up the infrastructure to teach the AI to do what you want it to do. So I think your point about AI driving a wave of modernization is absolutely right. I mean, the other thing that we see, and it's a little bit to this point about governance, is that companies, I mean, in the software development space, companies want to embrace AI. They see the stats, right? And they see, okay, there's, somebody's saying you can get 50% productivity improvement or whatever it is. But actually, if you go and you look at this, I think I alluded to it in my talk a little bit, but the actual realized benefits today are usually zero, actually, or sometimes, I mean, I think Facebook reported some of their, they had probably the most honest reporting of the AI-driven productivity benefits, and they said what they were actually seeing was 5%, which I think is consistent with what I see broadly. The part that companies, I think, often don't recognize upfront, and that those that are successful figure out, is that it's not just a question of tooling. It's not just a question of rolling out copilots and other tools. It's actually also about how do you set up a structure around that to fundamentally change how people are working, right? I mean, this is not just giving someone a new tool. Actually, you need them to do a different job in many ways, perform it differently. Getting people to do that is not easy. And also, it is it also requires actually measuring what's happening, right? If you go talk to CTOs and ask them what benefits they're seeing from AI, almost nobody can tell you, because they're not actually measuring anything. So you actually need to, a little bit to your point about observability, and you need to have some way of measuring, incentivizing, and helping people, guiding people on a journey to change how they work in order to really get the benefits.
Yeah, I think that point about being able to measure is very difficult also, right? Because how do you count when you get completions or when you go there and there's so many different tools. You just go to some website, you try it out and you get some help. So we ourselves use AI wherever we can, and it's very difficult to say this is the amount we're getting out of it.
Yeah.
I think it's very ad hoc at this point. But at the same time, we're all trying to figure out, okay, what can you do with this? What is the value versus the real value? Then in our case, we always because we have one degree of separation from our customers. We're always trying to figure out, okay, how do we adapt this to something that will give value to them, which is slightly more complicated even. And there's a significant learning curve. I think people underestimate the complexity of using AI. So it is absolutely simple to go there and type something and it'll give you some kind of meaningful answer. But then to convert that to, okay, I'm in the middle of this workflow and I'm trying to do something with it, it's going to help me out. That is not a automatic, obvious, integrated experience. It's quite you have to have a mindset change. And that's not easy to pull that off.
Yeah, I think Rania made a really good point about bringing AI into the software fabric because that's something that we have seen people starting this new team and then run it as the center of excellence team. And even she made that point, most of those projects, the efforts going inside those labs are not getting into production. So that's where I think the foundational technologies that we spoke about, API management, integration, identity access management, all these are required to bring that shiny AI thing to the enterprise and how you can plug it seamlessly. As well as, I think, bringing your existing developers who can build AI applications as well as how they can utilize AI is the most important thing, rather than keep it as the shiny thing on a side. So that's where I think we are playing a bigger role here and supporting our customers as well, how you can get the current stuff into a stage that you can quickly bring the new AI kind of capabilities, because again, AI is one of things, right? Like we don't know what will happen in the future. So keep on modernizing and then keep the architecture flexible to bring this stuff is really important, while kind of fixing the culture and then evolving with that. So all these should come together to kind of utilize some of these capabilities and utilize this internally as well as externally. So this AI for code and code for AI, again, it's about how you transform internally and then how you transform externally as well. You use it as well as how you can give it to the consumers or the users who's using your services. So I think we have 1 more minute, and usually in podcast format, we don't get a chance to answer any questions. So we can open up for any questions if you have, happy to answer and take a couple of questions based on this session as well as the sessions we had before. So happy to take a few questions if you have any questions.
And maybe while that's coming, I can so Jeremy, in your in this journey, when you talk with customers about because you've done this repeatedly over a series of years, where there's been one revolution after another, where you've talked about transformations. Do you see anything different in this process, or this is another? Because in our industry, we love silver bullets, right? Next thing is a silver bullet.
Yes.
Now it's AI. So this is.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that's certainly true, and I think there's always a desire to find a silver bullet, and it rarely works. I think I do see a much wider set of organizations that are excited to have this conversation now. I mean, the biggest change has been how widespread this conversation is. I mean, when I started doing this, it was a small minority of companies that were really trying to transform themselves to be a software-driven company, essentially. Now it is, I mean, as I alluded to, it was, that research was from 2022, and that was half of all the companies. I mean, that is pretty astonishing. And I see that now with the impact of AI. I think when we rerun that research, it will even be much more. So I think the biggest thing that's changed is the ubiquity of that ambition. There is a human nature to want a silver bullet always. And of course, AI is the shiny new thing. So people want to, usually the conversation starts there. But hopefully we've been around this journey long enough now to know that no one thing is the answer to the whole problem.
Right. And I guess AI, because it's a consumer technology now, it kind of, every consumer is always asking every company saying, what are you doing for me for AI?
Yes.
Kind of, there's an expectation. So you have to figure it out now.
Well, I think that's so, I think that because it's a consumer technology, also people underappreciate the difference. I mean, you alluded to it, the difference between, what it means to go ask a question to ChatGPT versus creating an enterprise-grade offering, right? And I think also, I think people also underappreciate like the distinction between uses of what is inherently a probabilistic technology versus where you need more deterministic technology. Yeah. I think we will start to make this distinction in a much bigger way over the next year, because I already see it. I talked to just tell you one amusing anecdote. I know we're over time, but we got a bunch of software product leaders together for a roundtable, and they're all talking about how they're using AI. And they were talking about trying to use AI for tech support and customer service with their products. And so one of them said, okay, well, I built AI into my product offering, and it's answering questions for my customers. And then I realized that actually the AI was recommending my competitor's product. So, and he was like, well, we tested this, but it is not, it's not deterministic. So, a normal traditional testing approach actually doesn't really work.
Yeah.
We need new ways of testing this technology because it's a fundamentally different technology in how it behaves. It's not as predictable.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because we have this chat thing that's in the WSO2Con app, and we put a bunch of guardrails to try to prevent you from going and asking about random things. But this is a very easy situation to happen with the way LLMs work. As you said, it's just probability.
Exactly.
There's no, it's a philosophical point, but there's no hardcore intelligence in there. It's just predicting the next token fundamentally. So very, very interesting. Yeah.
Cool. I think the clock stopped a while back, so we can chat another hour, I think. It was an interesting conversation. Thanks, Jeremy, for joining our podcast. And we are inviting you to subscribe to our podcast if you like this format as well as the content. So thank you very much. So we can move to the next segment. Right.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Sanjiva.